Russian sleep experiment is an infamous experiment conducted by the Russian government during World War II. Scientists sought to find answers about sleep, why we need sleep, and what would happen to the body when exposed to prolonged periods of wakeful consciousness. They promised 5 young war prisoners their freedom upon completion of the test. The men happily accepted. After all, it's just staying awake for as long as you can. The scientists put the men in a sealed room and pumped a gas, a chemical, into the room to keep the men awake. The first few days were completely normal. The men actually started to feel more comfortable with their situation. They talked more among each other and shared stories from their past. They told each other what they would do when they were set free. "I can't wait to see my wife and kids," was the usual conversation. But towards the end of day 4 and into day 5, things got dark. The conversations quickly took a turn. "We can't let them know what we've done. We will never be set free." Quiet crying was being heard. On the 6th day, the men tried to sell out their comrades to the microphone, promising information on their friends if they could be set free. During the 7th day, they covered the microphones with their feces. No one could hear in. The only thing heard by the researchers was muffled yelling and screaming for exactly 32 hours and 8 minutes. It suddenly stopped. The scientist wanted to stop the tests, but the commander demanded it continued. Late into the 14th day, the yelling began again. The scientist, shocked that anyone was still alive, begged to unseal the door, but the commander demanded one more day. Upon opening the door, a terrifying scene was exposed. All of the drains clogged with hair and flesh, a puddle of human waste and blood, 2 inches deep. 4 of the 5 war prisoners remained, their comrade mangled on the floor. The men's skin was ripped open, and muscles were shredded and hanging off of their bodies. They demanded the gas to be turned back on. 3 of them did, at least. The others' vocal cords completely destroyed, visually destroyed. "These men shouldn't be alive," the scientists said among themselves. "They aren't men anymore. These things are monsters. We must test them. They shouldn't be standing," said the commander, his hand tightly clenched on his weapon. As soon as those things knew that they would be taken out of the room, violence began. The mute test subject lunged for a scientist, breaking many of his own bones in the process. The commander had weapons drawn on the others, but it didn't faze them. In an immaculate fight, the test subjects managed to fatally beat and bite 3 of the scientists. The mute prisoner seemed to destroy himself while taking out a soldier, his mangled body all over the ground. The restrained 3 of the test subjects, barely. These men looked nothing of it. They looked like monsters, flesh and muscle hanging off of them, their intestines in knots, but they weren't heavily bleeding. The scientists tried to sedate one of the test subjects to perform surgery, but the brain waves of this patient immediately flatlined once he closed his eyes. 2 minutes of 0 brain activity passed, and the man's heart beat the whole time. The scientist came to the conclusion that high amounts of oxygen must have been in the blood, and that's why they weren't bleeding heavily. The others begged to not be put to sleep. They fought, one of them breaking his leather restraints and throwing a 200-pound man across the room. He was taken out by the commander. The other test subjects suggested surgery without being put to sleep. The scientists argued amongst themselves, but decided to try the surgery. The man stayed awake the whole 6-hour-long procedure. The whole 6 hours. One nurse wrote to her doctor that she'd seen the man smile repeatedly. When the doctors finished, the test subject demanded one thing: keep cutting. Once the scientists refused the test subject's offer, they let him up. There was no man behind those eyes, no color either. The test subject resembled more of a monster than a man. The scientist had no idea what they were to do with this creature. He wouldn't respond to them anymore, and at any moment, they felt he could hurt them. The commander demanded a firing squad to be put on him, but when they returned to his cell, he was gone. No trace of a break, in or out. That thing just vanished. No one knows where test subject number 8 is. Some say after mastering the art of not needing to sleep and becoming a demon. He is the popular legend